Welcome to part 2 of the valuation process. My name is Justin Udy with Justin Udy and Team Real Estate, and many people are asking, is the valuation I have correct? What are the questions I should be asking? How should I evaluate this property properly, and how would you do it? So, if you haven't watched the first video on the valuation process, please go there, watch it. It's very thorough about the beginning process, the questions to ask, kind of the scope of work that needs to be done that gets us to this part where we are now essentially doing data collection. Now, data collection and kind of property details is going to be one of the most important things, but this is why. Now that we're understanding what we're evaluating, now we can start digging deep. This is where there's a lot of challenges. Can I tell you one of the biggest challenges I have with some local real estate agents is they will take information and they plug it into a little database and it spits out a number. And so there's been a number of times where I've had somebody make an offer on one of my listings and said, well, this is what the valuation came in at. And I said, what valuation are you referring to? And they're talking about this system that you plug it into. When I say to them, that's just not gonna happen, it's not gonna work, or whatever it is, and then I get a full price offer, they're surprised. And it's because they don't understand how to collect data, how to interpret it, because that's what professionals do, right? They look at the information and they provide that to you. So I would just want you to know these are the questions that you're looking for, because there's time and time again where 90% of the properties I've purchased personally, folks, it's been from the errors of real estate agents, real estate appraisers, and real estate professionals improperly evaluating their property. Okay, so that's why we're going through these videos, because it's of high value to you. Data collection. First, we need to understand the market area. Every single zip code, every single area, every single location has a different value. I always will say, people say the number one value of a property is location. Truth be told is its highest and best use. That is the number one thing we're going to look at. So when we're looking at an area, we're considering, is it an appreciating zip code? Is it a depreciating zip code? Is it near a stream that's absolutely beautiful? Is it near a bog that stinks? It helps us get a good feel for the market conditions of a location and the value. Once we establish the area and know the general characteristics of that location, that neighborhood, that specific area, it now allows us to kind of move to the next area of our physical subject property. Now, what we're going to evaluate there is we're looking at the characteristics of the property. Yes, if you have a single family home and we're evaluating beds, baths, size, acreage, those details. If it's an income property, we're looking at the rent. If it ends up being something that's a larger commercial property, we're looking at the leases, we're looking at all those things, okay? But in the end, we're looking at the physical characteristics of that subject property, and we're looking at what are the improvements that have been made, what are the things that maybe depreciate, or depreciate's the wrong word, that lower the value, that are not up to market standard. And then the third and final thing is we're going to compare it. And we need to look at comparable properties on the market. In fact, we want to look at the following, and this is where is a very key, interesting question that people always ask. Can we challenge an appraisal? Can we challenge what a real estate agent will tell us? I will tell you, 50% of the time, we have a system and a process that we do to not challenge an appraisal, but to welcome more information. Appraisers, if you're listening to this, they do an amazing job. They have a very high standard, and I will tell you the majority of appraisers are very good at what they do, specifically because of the training that they spend and the amount of hours they have to spend to do it. There is times where an appraiser has made a mistake because the valuation process doesn't match where a buyer and seller meet because of the amenities, due to the resources, where they're just off. I've had it where they were over $100,000 off. I've had them where they're as much as $3,000 to $5,000 off. And truth be told, if you have 10 appraisers and you evaluate a property, every single one of them is going to be a little bit off because they're all going to look at things a little differently. So, they're arbitrary. I've also had it where agents have done the exact same thing. They felt like the property was worth this, and it actually sold for this. I've had people that priced it at this, and it sold for this, and they were like, why did it sell for that much? So, key point here is that you have to make sure that we're looking at a couple things very strategically. And so I'm going to bring up 3 points in this data collection portion. One is we need to make sure that when we're evaluating what is the highest and best use of this piece of property. This week, looked at a piece of property, single family home, large lot, looked at the details, found that, hey, in general, that property was going to be priced at X, okay? However, I knew the highest and best use of that property was not just this property. So I had said to the owner, do you understand that this property is zoned with this type of zoning? And with this type of zoning, we're able to do this. And if we do this, it can be this. And so it ended up adding to that specific property almost $300,000 in value, simply by knowing the highest and best use of that property. One time I went to a property, high rise on the right, high rise on the left. Real estate broker owns the property personally. He owned it. Made him a full price offer on his property, and he couldn't understand why. The reason he couldn't understand why is because it had a higher and better use with the buildings next to it, because they were just pigeonholed into kind of their way of evaluating things. So, next item is one of the key phrases on residential real estate that an appraiser is going to look at is condition and quality. Those two things are when 50% of the time I've been able to change the value from an appraiser standpoint. And I'm not changing their opinion. I'm introducing new information, new details. We had a property that was significantly sold at a higher price, but there was no other sales in the area. I had to tell the appraiser, let me, if I could, let's take away this comparable sale and please let me introduce this one, because it was not only a better comparable, closer in size, more recent, but it was a true market comparison to that property. And the condition and the quality was very similar to the one we were evaluating. So when they're looking at condition, they're looking at, is it a brand new construction? Is it a brand new renovation? Does it have kind of 3 to 5 to 7 years wear and tear? Or is it just dilapidated? Does it just need a ton of work? Based on that, they're going to give it a value. Then quality. I can have a brand new renovation that is done yesterday, but the quality of work was very poor, whether it be through craftsmanship, the materials I used, or how it was installed, or even any warranties that maybe exist or don't exist. Whereas you've seen other properties where the quality was top notch, where there was so much labor and materials, where, these amazing, whether it be wood floors, cantilevered ceilings, skylight, all these amenities that you've seen, whether it be in like in a parade of homes or just these beautiful homes, or even just a home that was completely renovated at a very top-notch rate. So looking at the condition and quality. And then the next thing is really something that is similar, recent, and comparable. I want you to think about this. A Rambler property is going to be much easier to sell in the long run than a two-story. Why? Imagine we're in a community where the average person is 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, whatever. A Rambler, you can stay in forever. Whereas a two-story, you may have to sell. So imagine that I have to look at these, whether it be demographics or sizes, because one property, it will outlive its life. So if I'm looking at a Rambler, a two-story, a tri-level, the values may be different than if I'm just saying, look, I'm going to look at like for like. A Rambler, a Rambler, a Rambler, a Rambler. I want something that's very similar, not only in what the property is, but also within the proximity of the property. Most appraisers will only go within a small distance. Just so you know, an appraiser, they have to provide to the bank information so that they can understand, and they'll kind of say, here's our subject property, and here's the comparable sales, and they'll kind of map it out. So the closer to your property, the more value it has for whether it be an appraiser or an agent or somebody, because it's within that localidad, it's within that local district. And the closer it is, it helps them understand that demographic, that micro demographic better. And then the last item is, so we're talking about similar type properties, close in proximity, okay, and the most recent. In a changing market, markets go up, markets go down. Imagine if I'm only basing my value today based on something that sold 6 months ago. Interest rates have changed, buyers in the market have changed, the amount of buyers that are available, the amount of inventory that's there, completely different. Whereas if I look at one that sold 6 months ago and I look at one that sold 2 days ago, this is telling us something the most recent sells helps us understand that value. Doesn't mean that one 6 months ago has no relevancy, but what I'm going to do is take that and adjust it accordingly to the market based on the closest sell that is the most recent. And it makes sense, and I know a lot of these things, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Unfortunately, I've had people come to me and say, hey, you know, I want to look at this property, and this is either what I want to sell it for based on something that was a year or 2 or 3 years ago. And sometimes they provided me a value and I'm said, look, yeah, I know you want this, but I can get you this. Or they said, I want this, and I'm like, the values are here. So just know it all depends on what is the market. That's why we do the data collection. Okay, moving on to the next step in the valuation process, and this is step 4 of the valuation process, is truly doing the data analysis. Now I just want to give you kind of my list of items to kind of consider as we go through this. What we're doing is we're doing a market analysis. We're doing supply on the market. We're looking at demand on the market. And essentially sometimes we refer to this as an absorption rate. So if you were ever asking an agent and you're doing a community, one of the things I do for our new construction gentlemen and ladies that build new construction is I'm going to look at the absorption rates. I want to know if I have a 100-unit community, how many units can we sell per month based on the buyers in the market? So we're looking at kind of that absorption analysis. We're doing marketability studies. We're considering, you know, what is, again, the highest and best use of that property, as well as, you know, looking at that land as if it was vacant. Remember the story I told you about the guy and the gentleman that we were evaluating the property, and we thought the property was here, but based on the zoning in the area, he could get 300,000 more? Well, truth be told is that piece of land in a different location, let's just say it was horse property, if he was in a location that was highly sought after, where the price per square foot for horses was significantly higher, it could be even worth more. Whereas, so we want to just essentially take sometimes what is that land value. Think of it this way. Your property isn't one big value. It's typically, let's look at what is the house value and what is the land value. And sometimes we have to do that. When we're going to talk about in the next video about some different cost approaches and how we come up with those, you'll understand kind of a little bit more detail about that. But what I want you to know is that we really want to just understand what is that land as if it's vacant, and then we just need to know what would this property be kind of as is, and then what would it be as improved. The reason we do that is because we just want to understand what is the market dynamics of the market. What is kind of the top, what is the kind of the bottom, and where does it maybe fit in between there. So as we go to the next one, I just wanted to let you know we're going to kind of, in the next video, in evaluating properties, we're going to look at kind of land, how we're evaluating land, things to consider, questions to ask, as well as how do we evaluate the approaches, whether it be single family, multifamily, commercial type properties. How are we going to look at that based on the approaches that are available? And then how do we define the value? So looking forward to seeing you then. If you haven't seen video 1, watch it. This is video 2 and video 3. If once you finish this, please move on to the next one. Anyway, talk to you soon. Thank you.